welcome to the Pop Culture Cafe. I am Huck, and it's October! That can only mean one thing, horror and Halloween. Okay, it's two things, but nonetheless, it does mean that I'm going to crack down on watching a bunch of spooky movies this particular season. I didn't get to do it much last season, so this October we're definitely going to make up for it by starting off with reviewing at least three. We're going to review Frankenstein, the Dracula, and the Wolfman, full sets, all the movies, right here and right now. Stay tuned. All right, here they are. Check it out. I know you're excited about this one. I mean, these are the classic Universal horror movies. Frankenstein, Dracula, and Wolfman. I did a full unboxing of this recently, so if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please go check it out. The reason I'm going to start with these three in particular is because there's a lot of crossovers in each one of these sets. So, for example, Frankenstein has Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein. That's where the regular Frankensteins stop. Then you've got Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, and House of Dracula, and Abbott and Costello meet Dracula. Or, Dracula, Frankenstein. And then the repeats are the same on the Wolfman and Dracula, which are House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, which is also on the Wolfman because the Wolfman's in that movie too. So there's at least three movies that cross-pollinate each one of these. Now, before I dive in here, guys, do me a favor. If you're not a subscriber yet, just jump down there and hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And make sure you hit that like button. Every like helps out a ton, so I appreciate it. All right, let's get cracking. So, Frankenstein. We're going to start with Frankenstein because that's what I watched completely first because I love me some Frankenstein. Now, what I want to point out is that the original Frankenstein, and especially the original Dracula, I want to start by pointing out with these two films just how good the production value was on those first two films, man. So, especially Frankenstein, the tone and the mood of that first Frankenstein, it really is pretty spooky. And the performance by Boris Karloff, it's just phenomenal, right? So the makeup effects on him, the mood lighting, his performance, it's all just perfect. Perfect for those early horror movies. And the same with Dracula, with Bela Lugosi. The lighting and the sets. The sets are phenomenal in these things. I love these old, spooky Universal sets. They're super mad. Oh my God. Okay, so here's what you learn when you binge 3 full sets of these in a row. The sets are enormous. Enormous. And a lot of cranky villagers. Like every movie, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in every movie there's an insane bunch of villagers that almost ruin everything because they're stupid. But anyway, so let me get back on track with Frankenstein. So then you got The Bride of Frankenstein. What's really fantastic about these two films is the monster, Frankenstein's monster, he actually has a lot to do. There's like emotion, and there's like when he picks up the girl and throws her in the lake, he's got to deal with, he's still like this human with an abnormal brain who feels, but he doesn't know what's going on. So it's very sympathetic. And may I say, also, Frankenstein is never the monster. He's never the monster. It's those a-hole villagers every single time. I'm telling you. If you watch these films, he is an innocent victim. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's going to hurl stuff at you, but it's not because you weren't like poking him with pitchforks and throwing flames and trying to murder him. So he's a very sympathetic character while being quite horrific in appearance. And Bride of Frankenstein, here's the thing. It is a fantastic sequel, and I love that they give Boris Karloff lines so he can do something with the character. Give him a little bit more emotional depth, right? And he's got the girlfriend, it's like, she hate me. She hate me. I mean, that scene is so good. But you don't get the bride until like the last 10-15 minutes of the film. So for something called The Bride of Frankenstein, I really wish there was more of her in the film. And that is going to become a curse with all the remaining films that I get to now. So, well, except for Son of Frankenstein. Son of Frankenstein, he does come into the film early. It's like when Boris Karloff is present as the monster, he's actually present in the film quite a bit. But he seemed to lose all that verbal articulation that was in Bride of Frankenstein. So there's a regression to the character that was kind of peculiar and a little disappointing because you want to see it continue. Another thing, though, is they did a remarkable job as each picture ends and the new one starts. If they refer to the previous film, they kind of like, if they go to the old castle that's been destroyed, it's in that state when they go back to it. So it's almost like, you know, it's like the MCU before the MCU was there, because they remembered all the things they did prior. Now, it also helps that you saw those films prior, because they don't really point it out for any particular reason. They just kept it going. So that was a nice touch. Anyway, Ghost of Frankenstein, we now switch actors. Ghost of Frankenstein now sees Lon Chaney playing the monster this time. And he's good, but not as good. You know, a lot of people, when they start playing Frankenstein, they just want to look kind of, and they do the walk and all that. It's like, you know, you got to mix it up. You got to make it different, make it your own. And pretty much everyone that tries to do Frankenstein after Boris is just kind of imitating Boris. But Lon Chaney did okay because, you know, Lon Chaney is a pretty imposing individual. But we'll get to that when we get into the Wolfman. So, and House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. So when we move on to those, what starts to happen with Frankenstein in particular, oh, by the way, in House of Frankenstein, Boris Karloff is the mad scientist now. So I guess he was getting sick of playing the monster, but he still wanted to be in the films because, you know, he's a big cash cow for Universal.
Ladies and gentlemen, the actual skeleton of Count Dracula, the vampire.
So he's that character now. And the monster, I believe now, is played by Glenn Strange, who will eventually play it in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But when you get to the movies like House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, Frankenstein's monster. Look, I'm going to slip up and just call him Frankenstein once in a while. So if that happens, roll with it. Anyway, we know it's Frankenstein's monster. He just kind of lays around until the end of the movie. And those two movies, Frankenstein and House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, he just kind of shows up at the end, or really comes alive at the end. You're waiting forever for him to be electrified and come alive. And then he just kind of like, villagers, there they are again. They come running in, and they start wanting to beat up on him, and he smacks a couple, kills them, and then he's destroyed. It's very Jason Voorhees. I'm telling you, when I watch this, I'm like, this is Jason and Mike Myers before there was Jason and Mike Myers. Because in all these films, and look, they're almost 100 years old, so spoiler, whatever, you know, he dies at the end of every movie, presumably, but not, because obviously you have all these sequels, so clearly he doesn't. So it's very much like that, seriously. Like this was Jason Voorhees, Frankenstein's monster. So, yeah, so that's how those movies roll. And they get shorter and shorter, too. So the first one's, I don't know, close to an hour and a half, maybe more. But then when you get to like House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, they're like an hour and 7 minutes. It's just like a long TV show. So it made it easier to plow through those later movies. And also in House of Dracula, we learn just how much these Universal monster movies love hunchbacks. This time, it's a female hunchback. But man, they got hunchbacks in every movie. I'm telling you, they got hunchback, hunchback, hunchback. They love their hunchbacks. All right, let's move on to Dracula. Again, Dracula, Bela Lugosi, amazing. The cinematography and the performances are just fantastic. It's all about these original films really set the tone. But unfortunately, I feel that they just get, you know, it's sort of like almost sequels today. Unless it's MCU, you know, they really pump in money into every film. But a lot of times sequels are just made cheaper and less good. And these movies are no exception to that rule. So there's Dracula. There's also the Spanish version of Dracula. So what they did was, and that's included on here as a special feature. And what they did was they left the sets for the Spanish production crew at night. So whenever they were done with Bella, they would all leave, they'd all go home, and then the Spanish crew would inhabit the set and continue. And may I say, excellent as well. Very well made. In fact, there's elements of both that are preferred depending on what you like. So I still like Bella better as Dracula, but the Rainfield in the Spanish one is really good. And a lot of the shots are very similar because they're using the same castle, obviously. But some of the shots in the Spanish one are more interesting. So if you've never had a chance to see that, do check it out. That's sort of the gift that's on here. Even though it's technically not a sequel, it's its own foreign production. Still worth a look. All right. Then I have to tell you about Dracula's Daughter. Holy hell, people. That thing was the worst. Of all of these movies, all the Dracula movies, Frankenstein, and Wolfman, the worst. And this is the movie after Dracula. Okay. The Dracula's Daughter was boring. So boring. The film itself was boring, and the actress was boring. Like, the person playing Dracula's daughter wasn't imposing at all, wasn't threatening, never even bit anyone, like, that I can remember. And believe me, I was trudging through that one. And another really annoying thing at the opening of Dracula's Daughter are these two campy cops that come across this death in this room, and this one cop is, oh.
He's dead. His neck's broken. Oh.
Like he's like, what is he, Schultz from Hogan's Heroes? Like every time, and I swear, in that scene, he did, at least 3 times. I'm like, what is happening in this film? Because you go from this original movie, Dracula, in 1931, to this, starting off with a very ludicrous performance by these two guys. It's so over the top. And it just, you were just waiting for something really menacing to happen. And it does not. So if you have not seen Dracula's Daughter, it's very skippable. I mean, watch it so that you're a completist, but you'll never... Dracula's Daughter is the reason why you will never get a 4K of these films. Because they're terrible. That one was awful. No one would buy a 4K of that. And if they did, they would just do it to collect because it's not worth it. The main movies are. Like that 4K set that's coming out with Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and what was the other one? I think Invisible Man. That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to that. But everything else from watching these, not worth it. However, on Blu-ray, look fantastic. These are amazing transfers. I was really enjoying the picture on them. Even Dracula's Daughter. But that's all I enjoyed on that. All right, so moving on to Son of Dracula. We start to get some recasting going on. Son of Dracula now, I think that was Lon Chaney. So you're getting now all those classic monster actors playing all these parts. They probably had a blast. You know, he was really good. You know, when you get to Son of Dracula, oh my God, it was way, way better than Dracula's Daughter. Also in the Son of Dracula, we finally start to see some ethnic diversity in these films. Good Lord! When you watch these things, it is so white. I mean, there's so many rich, white, entitled, privileged a-holes, whether they're like the leads going after the monsters or the villagers. They're all just torches, and it just... Oh my God, so finally we get some ethnic diversity, we get some African Americans in this film. Yes, I know they're playing servants and stuff, but at least they weren't victims or anything like that. They lived through the entire film, so it was just, like, it so knocks you over the head when finally some ethnic diversity shows up in these films. So kudos to Dracula for finally bringing that in Son of Dracula. And on another note, while it is nice to see some ethnic diversity show up in these films, you still get, like, guys being complete douchebags to women. Like, a girl will come in and be very strong and empowered. I'm like, all right, check this chick out, man. She got some cojones. And what does the guy say? Now, darling, sit down and be quiet. Or, you know, let the men talk. I'm like, oh my God. So you do have to suffer through a lot of, like, time issues. Like, we live now, and so you can't put our culture on that time. But boy, when you watch some of that stuff, it just points out to you, you are not watching a film that was made, you know, now. Anyway, let's keep going. But then you get into the House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, which are the same ones I reviewed on here, and they're the ones that are just kind of super short. It's fun to see Boris Karloff in that sort of mad scientist role, but they're kind of quick and forgettable. Again, Frankenstein at the end goes nuts, flames, and oh my god, there is a repeat shot. They did it! They pulled a Star Trek 6 move. That's right. In Star Trek 6, they blow up this Klingon bird of prey, and they reused the exact same shot in the next movie, Star Trek Generations. So, same thing happened here. There's a shot where, okay, check this out. At the end of Ghost of Frankenstein, where Lon Chaney is playing the monster, there's a big fire in this laboratory, and a column falls on him, and he's dead. Dead, you know. And then, later in the House of Dracula, where Glenn Strange is playing Frankenstein's monster, they use the exact same death shot. Because he's in a similar lab, and of course they just burn it. The solution to every one of these films at the end is to burn everything down, and literally as they're flames, they fade to the end. Every one of them. I was like, wow, even as a moviegoer, I'd be like, did we just see the same movie? This is also why it's kind of hard for me to like keep them all in my brain, because they end and feel the same. Anyway, so they reused Lon Chaney's death scene for the part where Glenn Strange is playing Frankenstein. So you gotta watch if you have to see them all in a row to catch that, but they completely reused the shot. Sup, Universal? All right, let's move on. Okay, we're just gonna jump to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That's like its own film and worthy of its own review, but I'll just quickly say it is one of my all-time favorite films. Usually at Halloween every year, I will put it on the television for all the little trick-or-treaters, so if they're coming by, there's nothing too scary on my TV, but it does set a wonderful tone here. It's, of course, these two classic comedians from back in the day, Lou Costello and Bud Abbott. Those are Abbott and Costello, right? And they met all the monsters. So in this one, it was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which also included Dracula and the Wolfman, and even at the very end, you get a little invisible man, who is voiced over by Vincent Price. So, you know, they didn't hold back. And let's see, Lon Chaney was the Wolfman. Bela was playing Dracula again, the first time he'd played Dracula since the original film. And Glenn Strange is playing Frankenstein's monster. And he's really good. I actually like Glenn Strange. Next to Boris Karloff, I like Glenn Strange second. Okay, next up is the Wolfman Legacy Collection. And what can I say? I feel the same about the original Wolfman as I do for the same original Dracula and Frankenstein, where those original films really took their time to establish tone and atmosphere and performance. Yeah, like everyone's performance in these originals are just so good. It's when you start to get into the sequels that they just kind of start to feel like, I don't know, like they're shooting a play. Okay, in all of these films, especially like the sequels, when there's less budget and less time, I guess, to shoot, you'll notice that everyone comes into a scene and they're all in a two-shot or a master shot. It's rare that you get like over the shoulders. I don't even think that existed yet. So when people are having conversations, there's no over my shoulder to talk to you and then over your shoulder to talk to me. None of that exists from what I can recall in all of these films so far. Occasionally they'll cut to a close-up, but even when the scene keeps playing out, it's all done as like a master shot with an occasional coverage shot. You know, and I don't know if those coverage shots were done because maybe the actor flubbed their lines when they were on the phone or something at the end of a scene, so they punched in. But anyway, that I found a very fascinating thing when, you know, watching all these films. But yeah, so the Wolfman, the original, sets up the legacy of the character, how he gets the curse, and so on and so forth that rolls into all the other films. So really enjoyed that. Lon Chaney Jr., or as he goes by Lon Chaney as well. Every now and then he drops the junior, and he just goes by Lon Chaney, which is the same name that his dad went by. So maybe when his dad stopped acting or passed away, he just donned Lon Chaney and dropped the junior. So, but he's great in the role. The only problem with when he plays Larry Talbot, right? Lawrence Talbot, that's the character. In all subsequent films where he is that character, he's just kind of a very depressed, somber character. It's just one note. Like, no one can write that character with any sort of intrigue. because like he's a killer and he's cursed with it and he hates it. He wants it to go away. So in every subsequent film, it's just him trying to find a cure and have it go away. So the performance becomes a one-note thing. I think once Universal realized what the character was, they didn't really know what to do for the actor to make it more interesting, which is maybe why after a while they all just stopped playing the characters, because it's just the same thing. So let's move on to Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Of course, that was also on the Frankenstein set. And this time, Bela Lugosi is playing Frankenstein's monster. And Lon Chaney is back as the Wolfman. It's an interesting pairing. I don't quite dig Bela as Frankenstein. I think he's really good. All these actors keep popping up. Like he'll appear in one of the other Frankenstein films, or Boris Karloff shows up as a mad scientist in another Frankenstein film. So all of these actors keep popping back up in these franchises just as different roles, sometimes as roles the other actor they're acting against formerly played. So that's interesting too. But yeah, I just prefer Boris Karloff much more as Frankenstein than Bela Lugosi. So yeah, there you go. That is it. All right, now we do have a little extra stuff here on the Wolfman, because once we've done all the repeats, there are 2 brand new films. And you have The Werewolf of London and The She-Wolf of London. So I will give props to Werewolf of London, where it's completely different. Talbot is no longer the Wolfman. It's a new guy in London, aka Werewolf of London. And the opening shot, it's for all you Star Trek fans out there, the opening shot is from Vasquez Rocks. The classic part where Kirk battles the Gorn. Yeah, that's the opening shot of The Werewolf of London. Pretty cool. Yeah, I was just like, hey! Yeah, because, you know, that's how I react when I see my Star Trek references. Anyway, so Werewolf of London did something different, too, with the transformations. With all of the Lon Chaney Jr. ones, he would just lay down, they'd lock him down, and then just dissolve between the shots, and he'd get the fur and a little bit more fur until it was finally in the mask. Or it would be a lockdown to the hand, and the hand would just sit there and then grow fur. Boom, now he's the Wolfman. In Werewolf of London, the actor is walking behind these columns, these pillars outside, and every time he went behind a pillar, the wipe, he would transform a little bit more. The next pillar was the next wipe. He'd have a little bit more fur, and it was fresh. You know, you get a little something new, so it was really good. And I didn't mind the story. I thought the story to Werewolf of London was entertaining. Still a bit slow-paced sometimes, but it was interesting. Having seen just sort of the repetition of House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, you know, it was nice to see something new. Speaking of new, we get to the last one, which is The She-Wolf of London. I'm just going to say The She-Wolf of London is the Dracula's Daughter of the Wolfman series. It's terrible. Now, it does have June Lockhart from Lost in Space. It's always nice to see June Lockhart. She's wonderful, beautiful, very talented. Yeah, if you're looking for a she-wolf to show up in She-Wolf of London, well, forget it. Never see her. You never see the She-Wolf of London. I don't know. It's like, there's all this mystery about June Lockhart thinks that she's the She-Wolf of London, and so you're following on, oh my gosh, she's the She-Wolf of London, is she thinking? Because like she kind of blacks out and she can't remember, and then it's like, oh, is it somebody else? It's like the script really was good. It was like trying to take you down this, you know, like who is the She-Wolf path, right? But then at the end, there is no shot of the She-Wolf. There's no transformation, there's no actual She-Wolf, so yeah. So when you get to the end, it's another disappointment. But there you go. That is it, guys. I plowed through every single film on the Wolfman, on Dracula, and Frankenstein, just for you guys, and for me, of course, because, you know, I've been holding on to this Universal box since last year, so it's fun to start plowing through these. And it does help that some of the films are barely over an hour long, so you can start binge watching a few more at one time. But that's going to do it for now. As I move on, the next one's going to be The Mummy, because all of these do not cross-pollinate any of these. They are all their own thing. Even Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy is its own separate film, which has nothing to do with Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So that's where we're headed next, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. I'm really enjoying diving through the Universal collection. It's so much fun. So if you do not have this box set, do yourself a favor and pick it up. The Blu-ray transfers are absolutely worth it. Phenomenal. Even on Dracula's Daughter and the She-Wolf, man. Yeah, those might be craptastic movies, but they look good. It didn't matter. They were so bad. It doesn't matter. I got them all. So do yourself a favor and get those movies. They're fantastic. That is it. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. Do me a favor. Again, if you are new to my channel, hit like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. And don't forget to leave some comments down below. If you have seen any of these or you're planning on getting this, let me know. Because I want to talk to you about that She-Wolf of London, that Dracula's Daughter. Whoa. You know, sometimes it's fun to watch the really bad ones as well as the good ones. But only once, probably. All right, guys, that is it for now. Thank you so much. I will catch you later.